Hi, so when I saw this shot of Steve in the woods, I was so excited. Look at this light, guys. This is a sprinkling of heaven, isn't it? Look at that light on Steve's top. Oh, my life. The shadow of the branches of the tree. Oh, I love it. And when I come across a shot like this, wow. I just think, look, you'll never, ever, ever get that shot ever again. Never, ever. It was just, I just love this. And I always want to do the shot justice, right? If I get a shot that's like, in my eyes, near perfection energetically, this is just, there's something about this shot that's so beautiful, right? And so when I get a shot like that, I really want to do it justice with the editing. And I don't just do the quick edit in Lightroom. I do all the things that I think pull it together and bring it up to its full glory, if you like. So, and by the way, I'm not saying black and white is that full glory, but I did this in black and white because I love black and white, but I want to go into a little bit more detail with my editing process and what detail of what I could do and would do and all the things. So I just want to bring your attention to this. Can you spot the difference here between the image on the left and the image on the right? So because Steve was moving, he was walking when I took this shot, there was a slight chance that I focused on his top, which is, almost parallel with his face, but his face essentially is slightly closer to the lens. Do you see what I mean? So it could just be that there's a lot more contrast on his top than on his face, but I felt that for whichever reason, his face looked softer than his top. Do you see that in the left-hand image? So what I did, and this is just an example of the extra trouble that I go to for some images that I just fall in love with, is I just take it into Photoshop and I just do some finishing touches, okay? Hang on. And with this image in particular, that was drawing around Steve's face and neck and then just bringing out that punchy contrast. I think I just actually used the clarity tool, maybe a tiny bit of dehaze. But do you see how that evens up the contrast on the top with the contrast in the face? It's got slightly more of a strong presence in his face there. So I want to take you through a little bit more of my editing process and just go into, as I say, a little bit more detail. I do love this shot in colour as well. I haven't finished with this yet. I'm gonna do various different versions and see which I like best. But let's just have a closer look at my editing process and what I do and why, and also how lazy I am. And I just want to touch on the fact that I've self-taught Photoshop for many, many years, and I switched to Lightroom because it's just quicker. Like I can just bash through a whole shoot on Lightroom and it's super quick, but I don't do the intricate stuff so much. I'm just so used to Photoshop for the intricate stuff, so then I will take an image into Photoshop. But in this case, I didn't do that. And you'll see, like, there's this little branch at the top right-hand corner in a moment. Oh, hang on. No, I might not have even noticed it on this one. Hang on, I'm playing around with black and white here. Okay, let me just get my bearings on what I'm doing. Oh, I love this shot in black and white, don't you? And I love using a little bit of vignette, but recently I'm noticing, and you'll notice throughout this video, that the vignette, where it's darkening around the outside, it can then make his top look wishy-washy, so then I have to dehaze the top or something to bring in the tonal value to match the tone of the vignette. Do you see what I mean? Otherwise the vignette can look too heavy. So that was a bit of a thing. You'll notice me playing around with the vignette, and then often I just take it back off again. It doesn't really need it, but I just like to bring it in. So here, right, so I thought what I would do to lose that branch is just crop it out. That's the lazy me. And then I was like, do you know what? I do want a little bit more headroom than that, because, I don't know, it just seems a tiny bit unbalanced, particularly when you put the vignette on. you see what I mean about the vignette? Kind of takes away the depth of the shadows in the top somehow because it's unbalanced, right? As I always say, the idea of going into Lightroom and just playing in this way is just to bring some variety into the shoot, because I like to give my clients enough variety because they might like a facial expression on one shot more than another, but I might choose a different facial expression. Do you see what I mean? And it's just nice to see the same shot in black and white, in colour, maybe some different warmth. Like here I'm just experimenting with that more of an autumnal look, just that nice warmth to the image, and I'm just exploring the filters in Adobe Lightroom, which I do love to play with. Some of them have got some really nice matte looks on the filters, which I think is really fun, and especially the black and white ones with this matte look. There's just something really, I don't know, maybe old school looking about them that I really love. So plenty of variety, just picking out the best shots. I don't edit every single shot. I just whiz through, pick out my favourites as I'm going through the folder in Lightroom. And this is where I'm trying to crop out that pesky little branch there that's got a highlight from the sun on it. But then I decide there's not enough headroom. So I do proceed to try and take this out. Don't laugh. Because I'm not used to doing this really in Lightroom, but I just picked up the remove tool, right? And as you can see, it does work. It's slow because it takes a few little times to go over it. So I just did it a bit at a time. And I am a little bit of a lazy editor just because I take so many shots on a shoot, and I also feel like it's better to get the images right at the time of the shoot and then just do a quick edit. I just feel that's the way I like to work now, to just try and get it right when I'm shooting. So here we go. Then I decide to try the heal tool, which did this. So it's not ideal because you can see that the texture of that area of the image is different. It's not as smooth, and you can see it. Do you see that? You can totally see that in the top right hand corner there. To the untrained eye, you wouldn't really notice, but I notice. So it wasn't done perfectly, but if I was working my old school way that I used to work in Photoshop on every single image, I would have just cloned it out. I would have used a clone stamp. That was one of my go-to tools for everything, really. But as I say, I'm self-taught, guys, on this editing software. So I don't necessarily always do things the fastest way, I must say. So I like to sometimes tilt some of the images. I don't know, somehow sometimes they can give a nice bit of impact if you've got a bit of a tilt. It's also really handy for when you've got tricky verticals and horizontals and things that aren't quite right, that you can't get the perspective right or something in the crop because of the situation you're in. It's sometimes handy to just whack a tilt on there, and then again, it's kind of a bit of a lazy edit really, because you don't have to go and fiddle around too much with your verticals and horizontals. But in this case, I really like everything lovely and straight. Again, just loads of headroom because I was shooting at a very shallow depth of field. I tended to not take my focus point too far away from the centre of the lens. Do you see that? So I'm always close to the centre of the lens in order to get Steve's face in focus, but then that means I have to crop the top off. But that's the only reason I've got so much headroom in these images. Yeah, because I feel, I've talked about this before, I feel like the centre of the lens is the sharpest, safest area, and I definitely don't want to miss the eyes being in focus when shooting at such a shallow depth of field. This could have been f1.7, I'm not sure. Let me check. Yep, these are shot at f1.7. Do you know what? I was quite impressed with how little green reflection we had on Steve's face here, actually, considering we were in amongst the trees. But the trees were the really, really, really tall trees. There was plenty of space around, and the leaves were kind of really high up, if that makes sense. But as I've discovered through working with Aaron, he's always pointed out that when you're working in trees, you can get that horrible green reflection on the skin. And I guess here we had the brown floor, the ground was all brown, and there was a lot of tree trunk, which was obviously brown. So the green, I can't remember what the trees were now, but the green of the trees was not overpowering, basically. So it was the absolutely, absolutely most perfect, I can't even speak, most perfect scenario for this shoot, you know, because you had the atmosphere of the trees, but not the overpowering green. And I think I've always noticed the greens on the Nikon D3, I've always found them quite overpowering, quite almost luminous looking. But like I say, in this particular forest with a dappled light as well, it was like it didn't take over. The green colour did not take over. So I didn't have to put them all in black and white to rescue them, you know, which I have at times done this in the past when there's too much green. Just to quickly rescue the images, you can tone down the yellows and the greens in your colour balance, but I didn't have to do that here, and that's amazing. So this is great to remember for future reference when shooting outdoors in these greenery areas. You know, it makes such a difference if you don't have a load of grass and a load of really vibrant trees in full leaf. You know, there was a lot of bark, a lot of brown, a lot of that lovely beige colour. So it was really perfect. Yeah, love it. Oh, this was the start of something, but I never got it. I didn't really take time with it. I just saw something of a start of a concept, you know, because it just tells a story, but it's quite abstract. But as I say, didn't perfect it, didn't spend long enough on it, just saw it as something I wanted to try, just focusing on Steve's legs with the flute and his feet, how he holds his feet so well. But yeah, perhaps something for another time to try. I'm going to leave it there because this next little lot of photos I want to talk about in another video. I just want to break things down and go into a little bit more detail with what I'm doing and why and what I would do differently if I was spending a little bit more time on editing these images and really perfecting them. But as I say, moving away from spending too long on the editing side. But yeah, really enjoying Lightroom, really enjoying this speed edit process. I hope you've enjoyed being along for the journey, guys. I'll see you again soon. Take care. Let me know your favourite shot. Bye.